So today we're going to take a left turn and we're going to talk about miking pianos with Ted from our piano channel, and we're going to focus on Earthworks PM-40, so stick around.
Hi, this is Ted Barsley with Alamo Music Center in beautiful downtown San Antonio, and today I'm thrilled to be here on the Audio Lab channel.
Yeah, and so, like I said in the opening, we're going to talk about piano miking today. And before we move on with that, of course, we want to ask you to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And of course, we do have our piano channel with Ted, and we have guitar, B&O, trying to bring you all kinds of information to help you be just a better informed buyer and help you make better decisions, hopefully. That's our goal. So before we really jump into this, I wanted to ask Ted about his experience using the setup and basically just, tell me how you feel about this. How does it capture the piano well? Like, do you have just a general feeling about what this unit does?
What I like about this unit, and I've already shot a video on how we ended up using this here.
Right.
And it was a direct referral from the Michael Silverman interview. Mm-hmm. When we went there, he had a brand new SK7 piano, I think, in his studio. And he had just put one of these Earthworks on there. Right. And that meant that Josh lugged all our gear up there, which we never really used to record the piano because we took the line out of the studio. And Josh said, man, we got to get one of those. I mean, before we ever even started shooting the video. And I sat down and I only listened to like 20 or 30 seconds and I thought, man, this is better than, and it was just the one little thing. You plugged it in and you set it up and you could move the microphones. Now, since then, since we've received this, I can tell you, and we started using it, it has consistently produced a near exact type of signal to the sound. Okay. And the only thing we haven't done is spent a lot of time horsing around with it like a teenager would. If you first got it, you got all this free time. I wanted to shoot open pianos, and then I wanted to shoot or record closed up pianos. Because generally when you close up a piano or get a piano more closed up like they did in the historic Caribou Ranch, they built a box over it, so it's just like extending the box. Yeah. You're getting the true sound of the instrument. You get a lot of the true warmth out of the wood and stuff like that when the box is closed up. Right. Granted, it's a boomier signal. Yeah. But what's saving grace on this is that the microphones are free floating. So you're not getting a lot of wood frame and all those kind of vibrations. Right.
And they're also omnidirectional too, which you can have proximity effect, which you would normally have with a cardioid style microphone. So.
Right. And now, in my experience, and I haven't really recorded a solo acoustic piano album in at least, I'm going to guess at least 15 or 16 years. Yeah. Prior to that, whenever someone was doing a solo acoustic piano album anywhere in the surrounds, the store always would get a call. And they'd say, hey, you call this guy because he's done a bunch of recordings and people call him. And I'll never forget, I had a couple professional pianists that came in and they listened to my first two albums. They said, man, I should have got you to record my album. I paid all this money. And now I started, granted, those two albums were recorded with Neumann U87s. They were a matched pair. I was extremely fortunate to get them. And I thought if I could get those, that would be great. On the next album, I wanted a different sound. I used the AKG 414s, I think. And put those in an XY pattern. I used a different piano as well. Right. And so I got a much warmer tone. And it was right at the beginning of digital where I went over to Studio M and I put down 3 albums that I said, I want the piano to sound like a combination of these 3 things. Yeah. And so they took a scan of the, model of the reverb and the EQ and everything and threw it on there, and I couldn't believe it was a recording I did at my home studio. Right, right. And it was just by emulating the same EQ. Right. Now here we originally started, I believe, with a Zoom, and we had in the XY configuration, and it wasn't just. Originally, I started with one of the handheld. I think it was a Z3 or X3, whatever they called it. Yeah. With the real not very good video.
There's a lot.
There was one, but the microphone essence hadn't really changed. It only got improved. Yeah. And the same thing happened. They have a little thing you can put on your iPhone or your Android, I would imagine. Right. And it's got the little volume knob, so you can adjust the volume. Those things record great. Dollar for dollar, that's like better than anything you could really kind of get out of a studio like 20, 25 years ago. Right. And so that's the whole thing is like, how much does it cost to get this? And number one, is it worth the cost? And number two, how often can you use it? And the thing is like always. And how good does it compare to historical piano recordings? And when you go back and you listen to some of and there's tons of wonderful historical piano recordings, but they didn't really start sounding really great to where you got into the sound of a piano until probably around, I'm going to guess like the early 90s, the late 80s to early 90s. Digital was a little too harsh for a lot of solo piano recordings.
Absolutely.
And the 32-inch per second standard on an analog machine, it burns up a lot of tape. But if that was the first use of a tape, I mean, that tape can still be used for something other than, but you won't have the master. But the idea is that the analog recordings through the compression added so much warmth. And in the process of going to digital, all this stuff has gotten to where they can now include warmth and wood tones and natural sounds, whereas originally it was harsh.
Sure. And of course, today you can also, feed your output of your microphone preamp into, some sort of tube-driven compressor and not actually compress, just hit the tubes for the color and the saturation and whatnot, which is also pretty common. But, to your point with early digital recordings on the Dash machines, which were basically reel-to-reel digital tape machines, they sounded terrible.
They were brilliant and harsh.
Oh,
they clipped real easily.
Oh, they did not sound good. And then, ADATs came out, and those were actually worse. It just made it a little more accessible for home recordists. So recording
I thought they were squeaky.
ADATs?
Well, okay, let me ask you this. I asked this question, okay, you're an analog guy, you grew up in an analog world, became a digital world. What was your response the first time you heard digital feedback?
Or digital distortion.
The squealing. It's almost like
digital distortion just sounds like it's horrible white noise. If it's happening over and over. When you use up your entire bit depth, or 16 bits, which was the standard at the beginning. Now everybody's recording at 24 or 32 floating point. Once you go up above that last bit, it's just awful.
It's horrendous.
And in the analog world, well, you have headroom, and all these different preamps, buses, everything else, they have certain tolerances that you can actually push to get more flavor or more color out of them. While they're emulating that with some plugins, it's not the same thing as being on a Neve 80 series or going through a 2254 Neve compressor or an original Fairchild 670. And who can afford that? A 670 Fairchild is $30,000, $40,000 a day. Right. There are some emulations and clones. They're pretty good, but if you want a real Fairchild, you're going to sell a kidney, and that's still not going to get you there, So I'm anxious to hear these guys open and closed, and also in a live environment. I don't know if you've
No. I want to. We've had it. I've seen it used in a live environment.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, Josh has recorded video and taken sound in a live environment and using one of these.
Okay.
And that was over at Michael Silverman's concert. I believe he had the PM-40 on the grand piano that was out there.
Right.
Because we pushed that piano out from the store. But the other thing I wanted to mention is after we used the Zoom with the XY configuration. Josh and the sound guy went to using a matched pair of the warm microphones. I don't know if they use which ones they use.
It's modeled after the original KM84 from Neumann.
Okay, so it's like a really super hot mic.
Yeah.
And those sent out a great signal, and I really enjoyed how that sounded. The problem is getting those microphones into the spot on a 9-foot piano requires that a larger boom stand with sandbags and all that, and those booms are really not really holding that much. It's just the only thing we have that reaches in there, so you have to balance them. That was a hassle, and I believe that's the gear, along with the Zoom that we took to St. Louis and ended up using the PM-40 for the first time.
Right.
And then we also captured it live, or Michael's sound guy and band did when they played live. They had that the PM-40 on the piano, and they also had it NV10S, a Novus NV10S out there, which sounded to me just as good, if not a tad bit better than the piano. But the fact that the piano sounded like a laboratory sampled instrument, to me, was a testament to how great the thing was picking up.
Right.
And so since then, we've used this on a number of concerts, and we had the Playful Piano thing where this was on there, and Antonia Daskalova was on here, and I believe when we shot I Say Denise, we use this up there in Austin as well. So we've done a number of projects using it, and then last week or a few weeks ago was the first time I really talked about just how we changed microphones. And there's a couple of pianists that I've followed for years and years on YouTube, and one of them I really thought he was playing a sampled piano. And come to find out, he was playing, he's got something different now. But for years and years, he was playing the smallest entry-lined grand piano from a major Japanese manufacturer that you could get out of Indonesia. And that thing sounded like a 9-foot concert grand. That's why I thought for sure it was a sampled piano. And he said, nope. He said it took him 2.5 years to get a decent sound out of it. He said it always sounded like a spinet until someone told me to close up the box, lower the levels, and make sure the piano's in tune, and it'll sound like a humongous thing. And ever since then, his piano has really sounded precise. And it was just because he had it tuned, and he had the right microphones, and he had warm. I could give you a list. I didn't know, I don't keep track of all the gear because there's so much gear out there, and there's so many people that know how to make high quality recordings. Where before, in the analog world, if you were a local expert, people came to you. In the digital world, everyone's a better expert than you are because they could invent something at home.
Right.
And you don't know about it.
Or software.
That's what I mean. And so the whole idea is that after a while, it's like, man, it's so cool to not have to worry about sounding good. Because a friend of mine went to a concert last night and said, I can't believe how great it sounded. And he hadn't been to a big show in a couple of years, but it was, of all things, Alice Cooper. It was down the street. And he said, it was just unbelievable. And I said, this is a true statement. It's pretty hard to go out and see a professional bad act in this day and age.
Right.
You're going to get shut down. People will complain and want their money back. If it sounds bad, if it looks bad, or something's off. And so when you're getting, no matter how old the act, whether it's you're going to go see a great show because the gear is just phenomenal.
Well, it's Alice Cooper. He's hired the best people in the world.
Well, imagine being him. It's like he's 75 years old, hits all his notes, and he probably knows deep down inside he never went out with a better version of band and presentation than what he has right there.
Yeah.
So we want to play around with this, and I want to hear your thoughts on. Let me give you a couple things. I want to listen to a big upright, opened and closed, and then maybe a not so big upright, open and closed. And then, again, one of my goals is I want to see if we can kind of match up the grandness of a GL10. Okay. A small Indonesian, Japanese-made, this instance a Kauai, GL10, which is about a 5-footer, and see what it sounds like open and close, what kind of signals we get, what kind of manipulation you can do with the signal.
Absolutely. And my goal in recording is so I'm going to use a special preamp. It's an AEA RPQ preamplifier, which were actually designed for ribbon mics, but they work really, really well with dynamics and condensers, of course. This is a condenser microphone set. It requires phantom power, has a really extended range as well. It records all the way down to 9 hertz and up to 40K. So it's going to capture all the low end and all the rich harmonics that exist in pretty much every piano in the world if it's tuned up properly and it has a good soundboard and it's just been maintained. I'm going to try not to adjust the levels from piano to piano, so once you actually hear what we've recorded, you're going to have an idea of how these pianos are going to project with the lids closed and open without me actually adjusting any levels in the back end or on the preamps. And there's not going to be any EQ as well, so we're going to record everything flat so you can hear what the mics are actually picking up. That's very, very important. Earthworks is known for their detail. I personally have never used this set before, so I'm really excited about doing that. And that's what we're going to do. So
I like that. Engineering challenge for the engineer.
Yeah, let's just
use something you never used before.
Let's get out of here and go and do this.
Sounds like
with
fun.
Ted. All right. I hope that we adequately captured and presented this microphone set and the pianos in a way that is meaningful and really unadulterated. Because again, I haven't done anything in post. I haven't touched any EQ, nothing. We want you to hear Ted's wonderful playing for one, and how these pianos sound and what these mics can actually do. Most of the time when I'm recording pianos, I'm using old Neumann KM56s, which are tube mics, which are really, really beautiful. But this does such an amazing job. But I'm biased, Ted's biased. We want to hear your comments and your thoughts down below.
I have an idea.
Okay.
I think this signal is going to be so hot and smoking that people can take the headphone output and throw it on their own board, and then they can EQ it and add reverb. Use this as a raw signal to mix it home, and see if, get a cathedral reverb on there and see how good this signal is. And take it, just use it as a raw feed, because that's what I do. I go home and I plug it into a little mixer and I add some effects and stuff. And it's all digital. It's like, man, that's a great recording.
Absolutely.
Because even though we're going to be recording, it's recorded live on the floor.
Yeah.
We're going to try to close it up and get everybody to be quiet and stuff like that. So it should be a pretty good raw feed if you want to download it and fool with it.
That is definitely something that could be done. Absolutely. Why not? Sounds cool to me. I'm always down for people experimenting,
Chris,
and
I
they should
can't
be.
thank you enough for having me on here, because this is about signals and capturing that first signal.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I'm thrilled to have you here and run all this gear through your rack and have you just give us a presentation
it's
of
my
pure
pleasure.
raw feed sound.
It's totally my pleasure. I'm glad that we can do this. So I guess with that being said, subscribe once again if you haven't, and comments, feedback down below. Let's be civil. You hear me say that all the time. We need more kindness. We need more love and civility in the world, and let's do that. Let's have a more wholesome and complete community where we're lifting each other up and giving each other ideas, and we're exploring ideas and just being nice about it. So I'm Chris. This is Ted, Alma Music Center, San Antonio, Texas, and we will see you again. Thanks a lot.